Hi there, I'm Phil, and in these story analysis videos, I take a look at a film in terms of its story structure, character arcs, and themes. Today, we're looking at Blue Velvet. Make sure you've seen the film, spoilers ahead. Blue Velvet was released in 1986. It was David Lynch's fourth feature film, after Eraserhead, Elephant Man, Dune, and then Blue Velvet. Now, David Lynch's Dune was a huge undertaking, a huge production with Dino De Laurentiis producing. Personally, I don't think David Lynch was the right director for that film, even though it has some great production design, some great performances, some very good things about it.
Because Dune was not such a big success and things went badly, Dino and I were ready to part company. But then he came back and said, what is this Blue Velvet?
Blue Velvet, on the other hand, is much more in David Lynch's wheelhouse. And immediately after this, he went on to do the Twin Peaks TV series, which was very much along the same lines as Blue Velvet. The same kind of creepy, small-town, David Lynchian, oniric version of reality.
Oniric.
It's a strange world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Blue Velvet does kind of follow a three-act structure, like many films do, and it's fundamentally about a young man who returns to town because his father's unwell and gets caught up in a mystery, possibly a murder investigation.
Hey, Dad.
Kyle MacLachlan, in the central role here as Jeffrey Beaumont, I think is much better cast than he was as Paul Atreides in Lynch's Dune.
Shield practice.
Shield practice? Gurney, we had practice this morning. I'm not in the mood.
He's very good in the part. He's the right age, being a young man who's just returned home from college, and he has the right blend of experience and innocence that this part requires. The inciting incident for the film, of course, is when he finds an ear, a human ear, in the grass. He takes this immediately to the police, of course, as you would.
Yes, that's a human ear, all right.
Are you the one that found the ear?
And because it's a small town, everyone knows everyone, he's also friendly with the police detective's daughter, played by Laura Dern.
How did you know?
So a friendship come romance starts to develop between these two, and she also helps him with his curiosity about this ear and about the investigation.
I hear things.
Yeah?
My room is right above my father's office, so...
Above your father's office.
She tells him about the woman they keep talking about downstairs.
But one name that keeps coming up is this woman Singer. She lives in an apartment building that is real close to your house.
This leads us to our first act turning point, which is in the diner, when he asks Sandy...
Sneak into her apartment?
Yeah.
Are you crazy? Jeffrey, she's possibly involved in murder.
I have a plan which I think will work. There's very little for you to do, but I do need your help.
And she agrees.
No one would think two people like us would be crazy enough to do something like this.
You have a point there.
The first part of Act 2 is that initial arriving at the apartment while he sprays it for bugs.
What is it?
Pest control. You gotta do your apartment.
And getting him the key. And then the second time that Sandy agrees to help him, to get into the apartment at night.
Are you game for more?
I owe you one.
I'm gonna try and sneak in tonight.
Okay. I'll tell Mike I'm sick.
So they go to the nightclub to see Isabella Rossellini's Dorothy Valance perform. And then leave early so he can sneak into the apartment. The midpoint for this film, which does come a little bit earlier than dead center of the film, but the midpoint of this is that entire lengthy sequence in the apartment as he's searching for evidence, and then Dorothy arrives back home and he has to hide in the closet.
Get out of there! Get out!
And then the real midpoint comes when Dennis Hopper's Frank turns up.
Hello, baby.
Shut up!
And Jeffrey witnesses what goes on from the closet. This sequence, and Frank Booth in particular, as described in the script, is why many people didn't want to play the part. Dennis Hopper, on the other hand, who was only recently out of rehab, relished having a part like this finally.
I was advised by my agency not to do the part because it was not a redeemable character, and I said I realize that, but it's being directed by David Lynch, and I think David Lynch is a very important director, and I think everybody in Hollywood will see this film.
And David called me and said, we have Dennis Hopper. I said, Dennis Hopper, really? How is he? And he said, he's like a ticking bomb.
Dennis truly understood Frank.
I called him when I heard that I got the part, and he was having lunch with Isabella Rossellini and Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern. And I told him that I was Frank Booth. And he said, well, that's great, that's terrific, and we'll have a really good shoot, and so on and so on. He went back to the table at lunch, and he said, I just talked to Dennis Hopper, and he told me that he was Frank Booth, and it's great for the picture, but I don't know how we'll ever have lunch with him.
The next major test for Jeffrey is when Dennis Hopper finds him with Dorothy and effectively kidnaps him.
All right. Hell, that's a good idea. Okay, let's go.
And we go to the brothel where Dorothy's child is being held, which is run by Dean Stockwell. A wonderful performance by Dean Stockwell here.
God damn, you're one suave fucker. How the shit are you?
Fine, Frank, fine. How are you?
But the second act turning point, all is lost moment, really comes when they go for another ride.
Hey, leave her alone! And
Jeffrey punches Frank in the face. And they drag him out of the car and beat him up. This finally compels Jeffrey to go and do the right thing and tell Detective Williams all about his little private investigation and what he's found out.
It's Frank Booth. He is a very sick and dangerous man.
And that leads us into Act 3, which is discovering Dorothy full frontal naked on his lawn and the confrontation with Frank Booth at the end. So what is this film fundamentally about? Set aside the controversial nudity and the rape scene and things like that. They do serve story, they do serve character.
I knew in the case of Blue Velvet that it was important not only to be David's decision, but also to be my decision. And it was not very clear in the script how far he wanted to take this character.
But what is the story fundamentally about? The film opens with a white picket fence and red roses. An idyllic dream of 1950s small-town America.
Was the night.
But that quickly descends into the grass and the underbelly of this world to that creepy beetle shot of what goes on under the surface. This is the choice that Kyle MacLachlan's Jeffrey is confronted with. He can either go with Laura Dern's Sandy, who is the blue-eyed blonde girl next door, the virgin, the perfect love interest for a young man like him in small-town America, or he can go with the twisted femme fatale, Isabella Rossellini's Dorothy. Now, she is not your standard femme fatale that you might see in a film noir. She's a broken character.
Dorothy Valance, the character, might have been glamorous, might have had glamour, but now she was broken.
She's almost mentally unstable. She's a masochist, after all, to Frank's sadist.
Hit me.
Should he go with blonde, blue-eyed, safe Sandy, or dangerous, exciting Dorothy? These are the two Americas that Jeffrey is being confronted with, and the one America being the kind of thing that Martin Scorsese portrays in many of his films, or the Steven Spielberg version of American small town, which you get in E.T. and Close Encounters, for example. Or if we go back a bit further, Frank Capra, that kind of idealized America.
I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
In David Lynch's world, both exist at the same time. They sit atop each other. One is a facade. The other is the real America, and you choose which one you want to live in. At the end, of course, Jeffrey chooses the sanitized, safe version. He goes with Sandy. But there is that scene where the two women meet each other, where those two worlds collide for Jeffrey.
I love you! Love me! He put his disease in me.
So I think the theme of this film is about Jeffrey making that choice. The spine of the film, the thing that holds together the A-plot, which is really the mystery at the heart of this film, and the investigation that the finding of that ear initiates. That spine is driven by Jeffrey's rather naive desire to solve the mystery.
There are opportunities in life for gaining knowledge and experience. Sometimes it's necessary to take a risk.
And the knowledge and experience he gains is the terrible truth that there are people like Frank Booth in this world.
Why are there people like Frank? Why is there so much trouble in this world?
Both of these, our spine and our theme, are expressed in this midpoint scene between Jeffrey and Sandy, with our theme being articulated in Sandy's dream about the robins.
So I guess it means there is trouble till the robins come.
So that theme is at the heart of Jeffrey's growth arc, is at the heart of him becoming a man. This is a coming-of-age story when it comes down to it, but what kind of man does he want to be? And the kind of man he becomes at the end after having gone through this ordeal, this encounter with Dorothy and Frank. He's now an adult, effectively, and he makes a very clear choice of the kind of life he wants to live and the kind of girl he wants to be with.
It's a strange world, isn't it?
And then the robin that appears at the end, with the beetle in its beak, subdued. Innocence has won, for now at least. In many ways, this was the first true David Lynch film. Eraserhead was a glorified student film. Elephant Man was a job for hire. That was a pre-existing script and story. He did a great job with it. And it's very Lynchian, but he didn't write the script. And it's a much more straightforward film. Dune was a massive undertaking, pre-existing IP. He did the best he could, but he was frankly the wrong director for that. It wasn't really, truly a David Lynch film. This is the first true David Lynch film. He wrote, he directed, he was a master of his craft at this point. This is the first film to show he is a truly mature filmmaker with his own very individual and unique vision, which of course he continued into Twin Peaks and other films. And while this is primarily the story of Jeffrey, the Kyle MacLachlan character, Laura Dern's Sandy gets a bit of a growth arc, and Isabella Rossellini's Dorothy doesn't so much have a growth arc as being a damsel in distress who is rescued by Kyle MacLachlan's knight in shining armour. This is a very twisted version of that fable, if you like, with Dennis Hopper, of course, being the dragon, the evil dragon. That's what most David Lynch films are. They're kind of American fables that look at the underside and the darker side of American culture. And it's nice to see Jack Nance as one of Dennis Hopper's henchmen. He was, of course, Eraserhead in Lynch's first film.
I'm Paul. What's your name?
Jeffrey?
So that's my take on Blue Velvet. If you like these kinds of videos, you know what to do. If you'd like to learn more about filmmaking, check out my book linked in the description. And if you'd like to support the channel and see some videos I can't put here on YouTube, consider joining my Patreon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.